Hey everyone, good players tend to gravitate towards using the best available weapons in the game. So for Warzone Ranked, you're going to expect to want to use the best possible weapons you can, the best damage per magazine, the best accuracy, the best control, the best movement speed, etc, etc. All of that sort of adds to being what is the meta currently. The current meta in Warzone Ranked is a bit broken because there is a number one meta by far and above, and this is it. So the number one meta rifle you can be using right now is the SO14, depending on how you want to kit it out. I'm using the AimOp V4. Tuning is aim down sight. I don't have the furthest eye position on this one because I'm using it in single tap mode mainly, so I just find that's a bit easy to manage for me personally. 50 round drum, lock grip precision, gain tuning on that. Using the Polar S Fire, you can go aim down sight. Go either bullet velocity or aiming idle stability. Pick your poison on that one. Ballmaster barrel, recoil steadiness and damage range. If we take this into the shooting range right now, it's really easy. Super easy to control. No big problem. If you want to use this in auto, or you have an exceptionally good trigger finger and you're finding the recoil is a little bit unsteady, you can swap that out and go for the Tempest GH50. It's probably what I would recommend. Recoil stabilization, recoil control. Take this back into the firing range. Very, very easy to use now. And even you can put it in full auto. Those two aren't a problem. At range, I'd still recommend using the semi-auto. So I've exaggerated that a bit, but semi-auto is better for range. Okay, the number one SMG by far, nothing really comes close to it. Everyone and their grandmother is using ISO 45. If you kill someone in Warzone, they probably have this as their weapon. There's a bit of variation in how you can build this out, not too much, but this is what I would recommend. The VLK LZR, tuning on this, sprint to fire, aim down sight. I absolutely despise the iron sights in this gun. I find them very obtrusive, so I'm going with a blue dot. Aim down sight and furthest eye position. For movement speed and general, I guess you could say just general movement, go for aim down sight and aim walking speed with the SK3 Cheetah. The A30 Stout's giving you the most bang for your buck over the EXP Shear. So I would go aim down sight and sprint to fire on this. 45 round magazine. Going into the... We're only worried about these two guys at the beginning. There's no recoil problems at that stage. It's very easy to move, very snappy, not a problem. If, however, you don't want the SK3 Cheetah and you actually want to use frangible, not a problem. Go damage range, bullet velocity, recoil steadiness if you want. Again, you're only really interested in these two guys. Fantastic. If, however, you are planning to use this as sniper support, which isn't a bad move in my opinion, swap out and get the XRK Sandstorm, go recoil stabilization, recoil control. When we take this into the shooting gallery now, we have almost no recoil on the first two and gives us a bit of an option to actually take out the one, the third dummy. I know it's not realistic TTK to sort of try to take the third dummy out, but it's better than nothing, and this is going to give you much better control in the mid-range. It's very usable in that way, in my opinion. As far as your perk package goes, there is some variation in here. My go-to perk package is Bomb Squad, Overkill obviously, Recharge, and Ghost. I find Ghost for 3/4 of the game is extremely useful. It doesn't get utility out of it towards the later part of the circle where High Alert becomes more beneficial at that point. But the amount of UAVs, radar pings, and what have you that's going on, particularly with the strongholds, Ghost is pretty phenomenal. As far as your tactical, smoke, nothing comes close. As far as utility, you can go a flash grenade, a stun grenade. They're great options. Tear gas is really good to pick up, by the way. Early game, great for clearing out a building, great for dumbing people out. Snapshot grenades are extremely underrated in my opinion, but the smoke grenade gives you the most possible utility. As far as your lethal, Semtex or drill charges are the way. Drill charges are fantastic. They're definitely the current meta for clearing out buildings. In ranked, I found they used to be sometimes phenomenal, and other times being quite useless, because obviously at the higher levels in ranked, people aren't stupid. So if you're just going to rush a building and they can see you rushing, they're not just going to sit in a corner and let you throw a barrage of drill charges at them. It's very, very odd that somebody would allow that to happen. Semtexes, however, provide you an enormous amount of utility, especially with the smoke meta. Yeah, you can still clear buildings with Semtexes. You can still throw them in rooms. If somebody's hiding in the room, you can throw it in there, but you can do something with the Semtex that you can't do with a drill charge. And that's number one, you can chuck it into the smoke. You throw a drill charge into the smoke, it's not really going to do an awful lot. Whereas you throw a Semtex into the smoke, and if the person's replating or reloading, using that smoke to provide cover to sort of achieve that moment, the Semtex is really going to foil that and really going to do a lot of damage. So for that reason, a Semtex is a good option. If you don't want to use the SO14, maybe your trigger finger isn't very good, maybe you just don't like single tap semi-automatic weapons, then there is another option. Go for the assault rifle, the Lachmann 556. This is how I've got my Lachmann 556 built. I like staying off the radar, so I'm using the Harbinger D20 tuning on this. You can go recoil smoothness or aim down sight. You can go aiming idle stability or bullet velocity. This is just how I've got it. I'm using the Lachmann 15.9 inch barrel, recoil steadiness, damage range, lock grip precision, gain, 60 round mag, and obviously the AMOD V4. So if we take this into the range, it has very little recoil, very easy to manage. If for some reason you want to get even more recoil control, you can ditch the Harbinger D20 and go for, where is it? The FTAC Castle Comp is a good option. Gain recoil stabilization and recoil control. You take this into the shooting gallery, and the gun's literally a laser beam at that point. You can, of course, even add a little variation to that, get some bullet velocity and some damage range out of it. The gun is still an absolute laser beam. So again, there are some variations you can add to the Lachmann 556 to choose your poison to fit your particular play style. I just prefer it with the silencer. These are the two number one meta weapons, the SO14 and the Lachmann 556. As far as rifles, there's only one meta SMG, and that's the ISO-45. If for some reason you don't want to play either the SO14 or the Lachmann 556 and you really insist on playing an LMG, you could play the RAL, but the RAL is incredibly slow. It has a ridiculous movement speed. The reload time is pretty awful. Overall, it's just, because of that, I don't find it a particularly competitive and good weapon unless you are literally just going to hide in rooms and look out windows and things like that. And then, yeah, sure, that'll be fine. But if you actually have to move around the map, I don't particularly find it a good weapon. Because of that, if you want the damage per magazine of an LMG, I recommend the HCR. I'll quickly just show you what it looks like in the firing range. As you can see in that particular build, there's no recoil to it, and I think that's the way I've built it. But the nice thing about it, the reload time is very, very manageable on it. So the build in this case is we're using the SZ Recharge DX. It's a fun, I wouldn't say it's an actual fact, but it could be very subjective, this, but to me, the SZ Recharge has the least amount of visual recoil of all the scopes, and for that reason, I quite like using it sometimes. The AMOD V4 feels like it has better target acquisition, so again, pick your poison there. The STIP 40 grip, fantastic. High velocity rounds, why not? Lock grip again on this case, and for this I'm using the FTAC Castle Comp for the horizontal recoil and the vertical recoil control. It's much easier to control vertical recoil that goes straight up than it is to control the side to side, so mitigating the amount of side to side recoil it has is probably the way to go for a particular gun like this. There is a sleeper LMG, that is the RAP. The nice thing about the RAP is it shoots very quickly. It has a pretty good time to kill. Has an awkward recoil pattern. As you can see in that particular build, I've mitigated a lot of that. So AIM-OP V4, Lachman TCG, again, just recoil steadiness, lock grip, again. The bore 490, recoil stabilization, recoil control. Again, we're mitigating most of the horizontal here because it's much easier to control vertical than it is horizontal. And the Romeo FT 16-inch barrel. Again, recoil stabilization, damage range. The big problem with this particular gun, despite being very effective, I'll go make a cup of tea and wait while it reloads. That's pretty bad. I'd probably recommend using fast hands with that, but I'll leave that up to you. Sniper, the number one sniper at the moment is definitely the Signal 50, simply because of how many follow-up shots you can make in quick succession. However, I just actually prefer the MCPR. Nothing's really changed here in this particular build. We just swapped out explosive rounds for high velocity. I did, however, switch out the laser beam for the Cronin Cheetah, and the only reason why I did that is if you're behind cover, people coming towards you can see your sniper glint, sure, so the laser beam doesn't really matter that much. But if somebody's to the side, they can now also still see your laser beam, but they can't see your sniper glint, so you're still giving away your position when you're aiming down sight. And because of that, I don't find it, just to mitigate that as best as I can, especially as the higher ranks go, I find it's a bit better. But again, it's entirely up to you. Sniper support is pretty wide open here, actually. Definitely pick your poison. I like using the STB, so I'm just going to show you my STB build. I've built it for snappiness, for that mid-range goodness. It's a fun gun to use. However, this being probably the most variables you can have here, if you don't like the STB, go for the Chimera. It's probably your best bet, especially if you're being asked to not only give long-range support, but maybe in occasions where you have to push a building, then you want the Chimera is really good. The 7.4U is not bad either, and actually even the Tempest Razorback is also very good. So either of those guns will work, and you build them pretty much the same. You're just really building for speed. You're not worried too much about the control element. You just need to be able to control the recoil at the furthest dummy. So if you can take down the furthest dummy without going completely all over the place, you've built it correctly, as long as it's still snappy. If it now feels really slow, then you've built it wrong. So there is a final niche build here. Everyone should have this in their loadout, I regrettably have to say. I'm calling it the water build, and without you even really seeing it, you can kind of imagine what I'm talking about. It's when the final circle is going over the water, or at least half your team's dead, or you're the last person alive on your team. There is a loadout near the water, or sometimes in the water. Landing in the water with just your pistol after being brought back or coming from the gulag gives you a pretty distinct advantage for water gunfights to have a pistol. I think the water mechanic with a pistol is completely ridiculous, but hey, it's a mechanic that exists in the game, so if there's a way to utilize it to the best of its abilities, then this is the loadout you're going to want. Number one, for when you get out of the water, because I presume you don't want to stay in the water for an eternity, you want the SO14 again. It's the most damage per magazine you can have, and because you might have limited ammunition coming out of the water, this is going to give you the most options, the best possible ability to survive. The F-TAC Siege is far and away the most broken gun for underwater action. This is just how I've got it built. You can build it almost any way you want, by the way, as long as you're using a 72-round magazine. That's about it. And when we take this into the gun range, very, very effective. Kicks like an absolute mule, but you're underwater. You're going to be very close range anyway. I mean, to be honest with you, underwater, you're not even hitting that person over there anyway. This is about as far as you're getting. And the thing of it is, that gun will absolutely wreck anyone underwater. It doesn't matter what they've got. You're going to do some serious damage. And that is the actual meta. So just to go over one quick thing again, This is the number one loadout that you can have, the SO14 and the ISO45. The number two, if you don't want to use the SO14, is definitely the Lachmann 556. The ISO45 is just the best SMG. And that is of today, which is we're in early July. Unlikely to be any real significant changes that happen. If they do, if the meta does change, we'll know about it. But for now, the meta doesn't appear to be changing. And for the foreseeable future, this is the meta. Hope you enjoyed the video.